Line's good.
Never on!
Whoa.
Hard! Hardly.
Come on, Brent. Line's good. Got real close.
The hair high, right?
Try and hit 2/3.
Have they saved it for her? Yes, they have.
Ooh, welcome to Game of Stones, everybody. I am Sean Graham Scott, not alongside this week. Instead, very pleased to have the Professor of Peel, Jonathan Havercroft, alongside, who has quit on Ryan for all the abuse that he gets at the start of each episode. So he's come over to the friendly show. Jonathan, welcome aboard.
Thanks. I'm not getting any abuse here at all.
Well, maybe if you make some bad picks, maybe I'll say something then. But for the moment, it's all good.
All right.
Welcome. Welcome. This is our annual crossover podcast that we've done, or at least the annual Bad Beer Bet. We've crossed over before to talk about the European Curling Championship, which kicks off on Saturday, the 19th of November. Jonathan, you're, of course, over in Europe, so closer proximity to this. How big of an event is this? Does this get any type of attention across any mainstream sporting networks or discussion?
Well, it's on Eurosport. So it's actually the one time of year that I can watch curling on TV legally. So I like that. I can actually just turn on my TV and watch them curling. So It does not get huge coverage. I'm not going to get into the politics of it, but BBC, because I suspect, and most Scots strongly will state that because it's primarily a Scottish sport and BBC is very focused on English sport, it doesn't get as much coverage as it should, especially given that it's one of the UK's top medal sports. But it'll get a little bit. If you know where to dig on the BBC page, you might find a little piece about Team Mallet or something.
Okay. So that's something, and it's weird too. Like, is there actually a difference, like at the Olympics, when they're Team GB as opposed to Scotland? Does that actually make a difference in how people think about it in England?
Yeah, no, you get a huge Olympic bump here, especially last year, because both teams did so well, or all three teams did so well. So yeah, you definitely get a bump, and there's a lot of curling on BBC when the Olympics are on. But then I think it's probably like this for like basically every Olympic sport, right? Once the Olympics are over, I don't really follow beach volleyball outside of the Olympics, but there's a tour there that I couldn't tell you anything about. So probably that's the same for curling too, right?
Yeah. And I agree. It's the same thing. Yeah, there's sports you kind of fall into every 4 years. And yeah, for a lot of people, it is curling, but that's not us. We follow it all the time. And this week, all eyes will be on Sweden, the wonderful town of Ostersund. Jonathan, you ever been to Ostersund?
Yes, for a junior B's coaching. It's very dark there. If you have a noon draw, I'm not sure. I was there in January. If you had a noon draw, you did not see the sun.
Wow.
Because the sun would rise about 10:30, 11, set about 3. So, yeah. My impression of Ostersund is dark.
Right. So you really didn't see the town at all because there was no light.
It was actually nice. It's like they've got really good coffee shop, which is surprising for how remote it is. And being Sweden, they have a really good public transport system. It was the first place in the world where I was ever able to tap using my, the tap. I don't know if they do that in North America, the tapping with your card. So this would have been 2016, 2017, I could tap with my card, which to me was like space age technology on a bus in Ostersund. So I was very impressed by that.
That's good. Yeah, that is a big improvement over whatever local cards there are to just be able to use a credit card. That's huge.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. And it all traces back to Ostersund, apparently. So good job, Ostersund. The world leader in this. Yeah. So we'll go through the men's field. Rocks Across the Pond on their feed, Scott and Ryan are going to discuss the women's side of things. So we are going to discuss the men's side of things in part, Jonathan, because you were just in Prague and you played a bunch of the teams, more so on the B side, but one A team that you are familiar with a lot of these teams from being an opponent.
Yeah, actually, so we played two A teams. We played Vez, who's the Spanish team, and Karagos, I hope that's the right pronunciation, the Turkish men's team. And then a few B teams. So we played the Estonian national team, the Hungarian national team, and was there one more national team? I can't remember. Anyway, the weekend was a blur. We played 6 games, and it was most of the teams there were using it as a tune-up for Euros. So,
Right.
it was a pretty 24 team field.
And
There were some
you won money.
other strong European teams that we won money. We qualified, yeah, which is always nice. And then Turkey sent us packing early on Sunday. So that's how it goes sometimes.
But that's okay too. You get home, you won money, you get home early. It seems like a good weekend.
Well, there was no earlier flight out of Prague, so I some of the money was spent on the airport lounge at Václav Havel International Airport, which is a nice local economy. So it was all right.
Yeah.
Helping the local economy, yeah.
So in the A pool, there are 10 teams, with the World Championship being held in Canada this year. It's actually going to be held here in Ottawa. That means that there are 8 spots up for grabs this week in the World Championship. So the top 8 teams in the standings will earn spots in the Worlds. The bottom 2 teams are out. So there is no in between this year. It's either you are in the Worlds or you are relegated down to the B side. So a lot of pressure, I suppose, on these teams, a lot up for grabs, in addition to a European Championship, which is very nice. So we're going to go through the field of 10 on the A side. I have put them in order that essentially is a power ranking of who I think can win. So let's start at the top with Bruce Mowat and his team. They went 9-0 last year. They are the defending champions of this event. Not a great start to the season. Of course, you have had the injury bug on the front end there. This season, only 9-9. Last year, they only lost 11 games. This year, they've already lost 9. Last event was the Swiss Cup Basel, where they lost in the semifinal to Team Ramsfeld. Jonathan, what's your feeling so far on this team? Some performances that we wouldn't have expected for them so far this season.
Yeah, I suspect a bit of Olympic hangover is my hunch. Right, plus the injuries, I think. They just have seemed, even like before the injuries, they had a pretty flat performance at the European Super Series, which is their home ice, I think, if I recall correctly. And home ice, they've been on the ice for 6 weeks at that point, or whatever, maybe at least a month, and even that kind of seemed a bit flat. So, maybe the Euros get it going for them, because there's funding attached to winning medals at these kinds of events too. So there's a bit of an incentive there. But yeah, I suspect it's mostly just Olympic hangover. Like, they've got to wait another 4 years for their big goal. I think the other big thing that team's gunning for is a Worlds, because they haven't won that yet. But they've already won 2 Europeans, so perhaps that might not be much of a motivator. But that's probably what's going on in my mind.
Yeah, and you have a good summer after a really good season last year. You come out with a bit of a slow start. That's okay. You look at the point differential for them, scoring 7 a game, giving up 6.8 a game. That's a lot more than you would expect them to give up, given how well they can hit. So obviously that's going to be a point of emphasis for them this week if they want to have some success, is to improve on the defense. So we'll have to see what happens with them, and whether or not the sweeping, how that sort of goes with them, and whether or not everyone's at full strength as we head into the week.
Yeah, I'm actually genuinely curious about that, because is Bobby Lammy now going to be back sweeping? I'm not sure.
Right.
And then, how long does it take for a hand to heal? Something else I'm not 100% certain about.
Well, if you look at like baseball players, right? Usually in a wrist injury, they talk about like a few months before they feel fully comfortable hitting again, right? And with a hand, it's a lot of pressure on your hands when you're sweeping, especially the way those guys do it. So yeah, it would be a lengthy process, I would think, to get back to full strength.
Yeah, I imagine. So that could be another factor too.
Yeah. So whereas, me, if my hand hurts, it really doesn't make a difference when I sweep. It doesn't matter, So let's go on to another team that has a major injury issue, but I still have them at number 2 in my power rankings. The defending silver medalist, Nicholas Edin, or at least Team Edin. They went 7-2 last season. Their most recent event was in Penticton. They lost the semifinal to Matt Dunstone there, 39-6 on the season. But the big news for this team is that Nicholas Edin, of course, is not playing. He underwent knee surgery following his injury, which he sustained during the warm-up of the semifinals at the most recent Grand Slam. So Daniel Magnuson is going to step in on the roster. He is going to throw second stones. Oscar Eriksson is going to skip the team, and Rasmus Rana is going to throw third but sweep. So that will be the lineup for them this week. Jonathan, is this, I mean, Oscar Eriksson was a skip before joining Nicholas Edin. Is this like potentially a precursor to maybe the next quad of Swedish curling where Oscar Eriksson is going to go back to skip?
That's a good question. I haven't really thought about that. I mean, I do think Nicholas Edin's had a lot of major surgeries.
Yeah.
So you do wonder if, especially the load that some of these curlers who are just chucking rocks, hundreds of rocks a day, if their bodies just start to break down. We saw something similar with Eve in her hip too, right? Pretty young for these kinds of injuries to pop up.
Mm.
So maybe I don't want to say that Nicholas Edin's done, but a knee injury strikes me as a pretty long, probably a longer recovery than a hand for a curler, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I think you said it last year. You thought Oscar Eriksson was the GOAT, not Nicholas Edin, because he'd done so well in mixed doubles too. And there's a case for that. Clearly haven't missed a beat on tour. So unlike the Mowat team, you wouldn't even notice a difference in terms of performance. A bit of an advantage with the Swedish kind of setup where they have a national team is that it's not like in Canada where if you're pulling in a sub, that player's got to learn new systems and everything else. Magnuson's been training with this team for years. He's often the alternate, pretty familiar with the systems, and they're pretty comfortable with each other. So I don't think it'll have that much of a negative impact on Team Sweden.
Yeah, I mean, they've lost 6 games all year. Nick Edin's been at the past few events, so they've been okay. I mean, Oscar Eriksson skipped the semifinal and final at the Tour Challenge, and they won. Like, he's really good.
Yeah.
He's really, really good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, let's move on then to Yannick Schwaller and the Swiss team. New lineup here. Of course, Benoit Schwartz is throwing last with Yannick Schwaller skipping. Schwartz and Peter de Cruz were the team last year. They went 4-5 on the season so far. The team is 34-15. I have no idea how these teams are playing so many games. I'm hurting thinking about the number of games that they're playing. Last event was a quarterfinal loss to Stefan Wallstedt at the Swiss Cup. For me, the big stat for this team, they have a hammer efficiency of 45.45. So very impressive there. You'd like to see it maybe a hair higher when they're playing some of the lesser ranked teams, but this is a team that's going to score some points. But I don't know, Jonathan, are you fully in on this new lineup?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think so. They haven't. What was the result of the slams? It wasn't quite as dominant, right? But
no, they haven't done great at the slams.
Yeah. So I think that's the like. I still think there's a bit of a gap between Edin Mowat and then say Schwaller and Matornaz, right? That's
right.
So, but with Mowat being a bit flat, maybe that creates a bit of an opportunity for one of these other two teams to kind of sneak into the medal game. And then once you're in the final, anything could happen. So I feel really good about this team, like throughout the quad. Like, I think they're a definite, if you told me in 4 years time or 3.5 years time, they'd won the gold medal, that wouldn't be that surprising to me, but it's not like a Dean or Mowat where it's like same lineup, we're going to roll it back out and be fine, right? There's a little bit of a breaking in period too.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not quite as high on them, and maybe it's because like for 4 years or longer, we've kind of felt the same way about Peter de Cruz and Benoit Schwartz. Like, they're really good, but they never quite got over that hump. And is Yannick Schwaller and now Benoit Schwartz, is that partnership going to be able to get over the hump? I don't know. Especially given how good the men's field is at the top. Like, it seems like such a high bar for them to cross. And given that Benoit Schwartz and Peter Cruz didn't, like, I'm just not convinced that Yannick Schwaller is so much better than Peter Cruz that it's going to make that much of a difference.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think the gap's that big, to be honest. I think you're talking, I mean, at this level it's big, but it's not that big, right? It's a couple of percentage points at each position for shooting and stuff. And
Right.
they'll have the opportunity to experience. And I actually really think Benoit Schwartz is like ice in his veins when he throws. Like, I think it's, he's still on the younger side, right? So he's the kind of guy who's going to mature into a really deadly skip, I think.
All right. So you mentioned the defending bronze medalist. That's who I have next. Joel Reiternaz, the Italian team, 6-3 last year, en route to that bronze medal. Last event was the Swiss Cup and quarterfinal loss there. They are 36-11 on the season. What's interesting for me on this team is their defensive prowess. They have a .59 force and a .34 steal. So when they don't have the hammer, they're not really giving up much. It's not really a huge disadvantage to them. So that is a huge benefit to them when playing teams that can score a lot of points. But Jonathan, we talked a lot last year, and you guys did as well, about the ascendancy of Italian curling. Do they make a bit of a statement here this week?
I think so. I think the funding is going to pump in. So I suspect they're mostly, I think A, off the back of the gold medal last year for Mosener and Constantini, but B, also just the Olympic funding. So I suspect this team is now probably fully funded and can just go curl full time, which wasn't the case before. So that's kind of a big advantage, and that's probably lets them close the gap, right? Like, one reason that Mowat and Edin are so dominant is they're fully funded, full time, full supported. So that takes a lot of pressure off. Whereas if you just go a little bit further down in the A pool, there's a lot of countries that have to kind of scrape just to kind of get their curling covered. So.
Yeah, definitely. And it's fun to see too, right? That gold medal seemingly out of nowhere. The bronze medal last year at the Euros seemingly out of nowhere. And yeah, as they get the resources leading into 2026, it'll be fun to see where Italian curling goes. And I agree with you, because when you look at especially the bottom half of the A pool, you would expect them to probably run the table, or at least get 4 of those wins against maybe the bottom 5 teams. So if you can go 4-1 there, scratch out a couple against the top 4, go 2-2, maybe if you another 6-3. Again, as you said earlier, just get into the playoffs and then see what happens.
I think they could beat Sweden or Scotland this week. Like, I wouldn't expect them to run the table, but I wouldn't be surprised if they pulled off an upset in either round robin or the playoffs against one of those teams either.
I agree. So let's go move on to Stefan Wallstad and the Norwegian team. 5-4 last year. They were the other playoff team, or finishing 4th place so far this season, 27-10. They won the Norway Cup 1 Elite in their last event. So far on the season, though, big stat for me, they're scoring almost 8 points a game, 7.8 a game, with a steal of 0.28. So they're playing aggressively, putting up a lot of points on the board, trying to put pressure on their opponents. But no big wins for Stefan Wallstad in the past few years. Perhaps that changes this week. But Jonathan, what do you think their outlook is?
So they beat Schwaller at the Swiss Basel Cup. So
there you go.
A close game, 6-5, could have gone either way. They lost to Mowat 6-4. So, and that's probably tells you where they're at. Like, they can beat the top teams in this pool, but aren't kind of a lock for it, if that makes sense.
Yep.
I'd say what are they? They're just outside the top 10 right now. Probably like 11th or 12th.
Probably, yeah, that'd be my guess. I'd
right.
put them in the 10 to 20 range, yeah.
Yeah, so that's probably where they are. In my mind, it's kind of a clear top 4, then Norway, and then a bunch of teams in the middle, and then the 2 teams that came up from the B. So I'd probably say slightly ahead of Germany, but still a pretty strong team and certainly capable of making the playoffs.
Well, that's interesting, because I don't have Germany next at all in this. They're going to be sort of next after that, but they're not next. I have Mikkel Kraus next on my list.
Interesting.
Yeah, 4-5 last year to finish fifth. They were, even though they were 4-5, they were outscored by 13. So won the
Yeah.
close games, got blown out in a few. But I don't know. I mean, you guys are friends with Mads, so what kind of intel do you have on them so far this year?
Oh, all right. All right. This is the gossip I picked up from them. Is that because they played in the Olympics? So in the Olympics, you got a swag bag,
Okay.
and apparently Airbnb was a major Olympic sponsor, so they got like a massive Airbnb credit, and that's been their biggest sponsor is this Airbnb credit because they can just go anywhere from they curl and their accommodations paid for. So when I was talking about like, there's a big divide, like the Danish teams not super well funded, so even just getting the Olympics, I think helped them get a little bit more funding, but you can see a huge difference if you're like, I don't think some of the other teams, I can't see Nicholas Adin being excited about that. I think he's probably other
Right.
expenses are covered in a different way, right? Whereas for a team like Denmark, that thing is actually massive. That like, great, we've got multiple seasons of accommodation covered. So,
Right.
and I think
But
that
so
actually does kind of play into some of the differences at this level, right? Is can you devote full time? Is your country able to hire like top quality coaching? Can you train at a facility with fantastic ice? Like all of those things actually I think matter and often make the difference between being like top 10 in the world and, being 20 to 50.
wait, so every Olympian got a giant Airbnb credit?
They didn't quite, they were just mentioning in passing. So you're like, are you staying at the hotel? I'm like, no. And then they said, this is why. And then I was like, oh, I want that. I should try to go to the Olympics. I don't know.
That's pretty cool.
No, but
Like, come on, that's pretty spectacular. Like even like Gushu. So if Gushu got that, like that's still money that they don't have to spend out of their own pocket. Like that's not bad. Also, there's like
yeah, no,
10,000 Olympians. Like that's a crazy amount of money.
yeah, I think I don't quite understand how it all, but yeah, apparently there is like a lot of just crazy swag you get when you go to the Olympics, right? Apparently it's just like, these shoes, this watch, this whatever, right? So, because I think that kind of goes with being a different kind of sponsor or something. So I'm not sure if they got it as the Olympics or through Olympic sponsoring. I'm not quite clear how, but they said it was part of their Olympic thing. So
Nice. All right.
anyway,
Well,
that was a bit of funny gossip. So,
yeah, I like it.
yeah. Yeah. So anyway, but it was also like it's funny that like this is an Olympic, athletes and like what I'm saying. Like to me, it was kind of striking that's kind of a big thing for them. Whereas if you were LeBron James, I don't think cares about a 10,000 pound or whatever
Right.
how many dollar credit it is from Airbnb or whatever, right?
Well,
It was,
good.
kind, it was kind of both like I was both jealous and like charmed by the story.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Good for them. And, I guess good for
Yeah.
Danish curling too. It sort of
Yeah.
helps them a little bit, Yeah. So, so that's a great story there. Now you mentioned the Germans earlier. So let's talk about Sixten Totzig and his team. They went 3-6 last year, 8th place, did qualify for the World Championship. You do have a new team this year where Dominic Grendel is the only returning player on the team from last year in the lead position. He has Claudius Harsch playing third, Magnus Suter playing second. I assume that's the brother of Joshua Suter, who is not on the team anymore, but is here as the alternate. So in their last event, 2 and 3 missed the playoffs at that Swiss Cup. I don't know, Jonathan, does Sixten Totzig, he's been around a while now, is like someone who people think is like up and comer, is going to make a jump. Does he do it now? Is this the time for Sixten Totzig in Germany?
I think so. It's basically they're a similar situation. I know Claudius Harsch, who's been on our episode before. We had a good chat. And similar kind of thing. This is a team that's put together by the German Federation. They have a bit more funding, so they've got a slightly different model in Germany where if you're an Olympian or Olympic potential, you join the army because everyone's got to do compulsory military service. So you stay in the army, you do a bit of military training for about a month a year, and then the rest of the time, the German army pays you to train in your sport. So they're basically able to dedicate full time and have had enough money to play. So they're playing once. So the reason I would put Germany slightly ahead of Denmark is Germany's been able to play at the Masters level in Europe, which that's kind of that's the European equivalent of the tournaments just below the slams. So that's where the Adines, the Mallets, when they're not slamming, if they're based in Europe, they play Masters tier. Denmark's been playing the level that my team plays, which is like challenger tier. Like we play what are called 100 or 300 level events, right? So that's, and they've posted decentish results at those events, you know? So like, I don't think they're ready yet to go into that top four, but you know, they've clearly got a plan to be in Italy at the end of the quad. That's kind of their goal. So I for that reason, I kind of put them slightly ahead of Denmark. And again, it's probably mostly just kind of, it sounds like Germany has slightly better funding than Denmark at the moment. So it's basically it. Although they're both good teams, like Krause, Tuna's a good lineup there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Claudius Harsch is just on he's the alternate on the German junior team. So
right.
Had a good,
he looks like the picture. Claudio Harsch, they have a picture of him on the World Curling website. He looks like a guy who's like who would be I don't know, like if you were doing like a German youth profile in a magazine, you're like, oh, Claudio Harsch, he's going to be the picture on the front of it. That's what he looks like to me, you know.
But yeah, and he just won the bronze medal in the mixed doubles, right? And he was like this. He just left junior eligibility this year, right. So that's a really, I think, a really young up and coming team in Europe. So definitely watch out for them.
Yeah. All right, let's then move on to Lukas Klima and the Czech Republic team. They went 4-5 last year, 7th place, got them into the World Championship. So far this season, 9-8. They went 2-3 at the Swiss Cup, missing the playoffs. There are tons of points in their games. They're averaging 7.34, giving up 7.01 against. So 14 points a game. You're getting your money's worth if you watch a Lukas Klima game in terms of points, at least. I had a chance to talk with him a few times at the World Championship last year in Vegas, and Saville as well, who was there coaching them. They're optimistic. Even when they got crushed in a couple of games, they came off the ice and were optimistic. We're taking each game as a learning opportunity, trying to get better, more arena ice, with a long-term goal of 2026, as a lot of these teams have. But I don't know what the feasibility of it is, but certainly I think if for whatever reason they don't qualify for a world championship this week, that will be a huge disappointment.
I think they'll qualify for a world championship. KenPom has them surprisingly high, I think. Let me see. He has them at 36th in his rankings, whereas he has Denmark 64, and I'm confusing Germany and Belgium, and Toxic at 47. So of the three that I would have put all in a chunk, KenPom's rating says Klima's the strongest of the three. You know, these are small sample sizes. In theory, the Bradley Terry method is supposed to kind of cut through that a bit, but I think I like the Klima team. I think that I like the fact they play an aggressive style, right? And that's always fun to watch. So they're bold. You know, some of the other, probably the stereotype with European curling is that it tends towards very defensive style. So not much risk taking for a lot of the countries, and you know, not much tactically interesting. But Klima definitely doesn't fit that mold. Very aggressive.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a couple times last year in games that I was watching with the Worlds where I was like, maybe you should bail now, Lucas. Like, Peel would be helpful here. And no, let's throw another freeze or whatever. Like he was fully in on playing an aggressive style, which is great from an entertainment perspective. But you know, sometimes you need to calm it down a little bit and throw a Peel.
Yeah.
All right, now let's talk about the two teams that were promoted up from B last year. And I've taken them in order purely on what their records were at the B side and how they got into this. So let's start with Turkey and Ugurkan Karagöz. I hope I said that right.
I think it's Karagöz, yeah.
Karagöz. They went 6-1 in the B pool, in their pool play and the B side last year. During that event, they just crushed people. They scored 8.3 a game, only gave up 4.1. Jonathan, you played against him recently. Does he have a chance?
Yesterday. Yeah, no, they're a good team. They really are, and not just because they beat us, because bad teams beat us too. But no, I think if there's a country to really make a breakout this next cycle, as in like, people are like, why is this team in the World Championship? Like, Turkey, both the men's and the women's. Dilsat Yildiz is a really good shot maker too. Karagos, the full team's kind of really technically solid, strong sweeping, don't miss much. I'd say having both played against them and watched them play this weekend, I think they're a step behind the elite when it comes to some of the tactics. But I think that that's just a matter of them getting a bit more experience at this level, and they'll close the gap. So they will not be an easy match for any of the teams there. Let's put it that way. Like on shot making percentage, they'll be up there with all the other teams.
Does arena matter though for them, right? This is going to be a slightly different surface than I imagine some of the surfaces that they have played on. Like how much is that going to factor in, do you think, for them this week?
I think, okay, so here's the weird thing about European national curling is, and Karagos has played, like, he's basically been the Turkish skip either through juniors or men's for like a decade plus. So he's basically, I think they don't play much on tour, but they train a lot at their facility in Turkey, and then they play a lot of these kind of WCF events. And so that's kind of, well, this is a WCF event, so it's a pretty standard ice format with like about 4 feet of curl, 14.5-second ice. So and often the same stones shift from place to place. So they've probably got a decade plus experience on this kind of ice, even if they're not known to the TSN crowd. Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Okay. That's fair.
But I'm serious though. I think Turkey's close to a breakout. Like, you know what? I'm not sure who. I guess Italy was the surprise of last quad, right? But and maybe not quite Amos Mosinner standard, but like it's a country where I think that people might be like, what, in the Worlds in the next couple of years, kind of thing. They're taking it seriously and have ambitions.
Yeah, and as you say too, like if you look at all of the disciplines, and maybe not even the Olympic disciplines, if you look at, say, the World Mixed Championship too, where you can combine the best of the men's and the women's players. All right, that's a place where they can make some hay. They've had some success in the mixed doubles as well. So it's that finding the full lineup of 4 on both the men's and the women's side. And we saw Yildiz last year at the Worlds, where she was great, but she was trying to bail out so many times where the team was in bad shape at the end of ends. So it's really just getting the entirety of the lineup set in the 4-person game.
Yeah. And I actually think they are pretty strong front to back on the shot making.
And we'll certainly find out this week. And then the final team, Sergio Vez and the Spanish side. They went 6-1 last year. They actually lost to Turkey in the semifinal, but they are here because Russia is not. Russia would have had the final spot, or whatever the World Curling Federation decided to call the players from Russia. But they are not here. The World Curling Federation has continued its prohibition on Russian players, at least until the end of this calendar year. I would expect that to continue, barring any major changes in the situation in Europe. So we get the Spanish side here. If you're not familiar with Sergio Vez, he does have some success. Won a silver medal at the 2018 World Mixed Championships as a skip, bronze medal in the 2014 Mixed Doubles World Championship. So there's a bit of a pedigree to Sergio Vez. He's played in this event for a while. He's won the C division before. He obviously was in the B last year. Jonathan, can he win a game in the A pool?
Yeah, they can win a game. I mean, Sergio's a very good shooter. I think the depth on the team's probably a bit thin for the A level. So they may not. I would be surprised if they stayed up. I probably will pick them to go down. Spoiler alert, but they're not like an automatic win for like any of the teams there. And they've been playing on tour and getting a lot of experience. So if they have a good week, I could see them maybe squeaking and staying up. But I think that would be a big breakthrough for them. I think there's still a pretty significant gap between them and the rest of the A pool. Most of them, I'm just pulling up their thing on KenPom. like they've played a few A pool teams this year and don't have any wins against them. So their wins have all been against B pool teams.
So it'll be it'll be tough sledding for them, but cool to see Spain here, right? I mean, obviously, you'd rather there not be a war taking place, but it is cool that that Spain is here and in the A pool get some exposure against some high level teams. So so good for Sergio Vez and his team to be in the A.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Jonathan, so those are the 10 teams in the A. As I said, 8 are going to the World Championship, 2 are going down. The bad beer bet returns. I think we've only won it once in however many times we've done this. So hopefully we can win again. I'm not sure if the Pan Continental Championship counts to this. I thought it did, but who knows? I will now advocate that it doesn't because my mom's picks weren't the greatest. So let's.
I didn't even make picks, did I?
Oh, great! Then it doesn't count. Then it's out. Yeah, then it's out. So we'll do playoff teams. We'll start with A. We'll move on to B in a second, but let's do A first. You can go first on the A. I'll go first on the B potentially, so that we're not sort of just copying each other. But who are your 4 playoff teams in the A pool?
4 in the A. All right. I will go Ericsson for sure. So Sweden, Italy definitely in, Switzerland. I'm gonna go out on a limb and pick Wallstad to pipe Mauet. So that's my upset.
All right. I like that. I am going to go with the 3 S teams of Scotland, Sweden, Switzerland, and then I will also take an off the board potential pick. And I'll go with Germany. You kind of talked me into Germany in 6th and Totsic. So I'll sort of go there. And I'll go first on who goes down here because I think it's relatively simple. I don't expect anything crazy to happen. So I'm going to go with Turkey and Spain to go straight down.
All right. I'm gonna go Denmark and Spain. And pick Turkey to stay up. Mostly for ego purposes. Because we lost to Turkey. So I want them to stay up. So then it looks better for us.
Right. All right. I'll take it. Whatever the reason is, it's I'm in on. So all right. So that's the A side. Let's move on to the B side. 16 teams in play here. There will be 2 pools of 8 round robin play, and then into a playoff format. 2 teams will be promoted up to the B side. The 2 teams who are in this after being in the A last year are Netherlands and Wouter Goskins, and then Finland and Kali Kiskinen. Some other teams that, Jonathan, you're familiar with, but let's start with those 2 of Netherlands and Finland. Are they the odds-on favorites to move back up to A?
Definitely the Netherlands. If you just go off ratings, they'd be mid-table in the A pool, I think. So I think that'll be like, Fox in the hen house kind of thing. I do think, looking at the groupings, I also think Group B is basically the group of death. It's like it looks a little uneven to me.
Okay.
Compared to Group A. So.
Okay. So what are they? What is Group? Like what is Group B though? Like who's there?
Austria, solid. Belgium, who've come up from C recently, but play a lot on the European tour and are improving. France is they're solid, but I think actually this group's so deep they might go down. Hungary is pretty strong. They got Zoltan Kiss, who's like former gold medalist in mixed doubles, throwing last stones there. Latvia, another kind of one of these European kind of tour teams. Martin Turksen's putting a lot of work into it. Then Van Dorp. Portugal, which sounds like one of these new teams, but it's mostly Canadian-based curlers coached by Dan Raphael. If you know kind of the coaching scene, he's kind of one of the top kind of super coaches out there. So, and then Slovenia, Stefan Sever, who's kind of also, we've had him on the podcast. He's a pretty strong curler too. So that's like a deep pool. It doesn't seem as balanced to me as the A pool. So,
okay.
Anyway.
All right. So yes, then on the A side, that leaves teams like then England, Estonia, Ireland, Ukraine, Wales. Yeah, that does seem. You're right. That does seem kind of imbalanced there with all
Yeah.
those other countries. So you've played a bunch of these teams. Is there anyone that okay? Let's put it out there. You're rooting for England to get promoted. You
Yeah.
want them to be promoted so that you can win the English championships, and then next year you're playing in the A pool, right? So let's just establish that
Yeah.
off the top that you're
Oh, yeah,
fully
I've got
biased.
biases here.
Yeah, that you want that you want that you want the team, you want Andrew and his team, Andrew Woolston and the team, to have a great week this week, and then show up at the English National Championships like hungover or something from having a great week that they just
Yeah.
don't recover from
Oh,
it,
thanks.
so that you can get that. But
Yeah.
what do you think their chances are? Anyone else who you're familiar with? What is your expectation for the B pool?
Okay, so I think Netherlands is significantly stronger. I think that also oddly because Russia and Belarus were struck like taken off and Spain went up, that also kind of cleared out another thing. So I think actually it's Goskin's team for sure going back up, and then I think there's a lot of teams fairly equal. I think you're right. Finland's probably a little bit favored, but the if I'm in Group A, right? If I'm Woolston or a similar team, I think it's like have a good week, make the playoffs, and then just win the two games you have to win to get to the A pool, right? That's the
Yeah.
plan. The Group B is definitely Group of Death because, like, I think I think it'd be tough. You know, uh, yeah, there's about 5 teams there that I could see grabbing the other 2 spots besides Van Dorp pretty easily. A side, I think I could see England making playoffs. I think then it gets a bit touch and go. I think because then they're playing a crossover against Netherlands, which would be tough. Probably Finland's the top in Group A. As we call them, the home nation. So Ireland, Wales, and England are all, I'd say, pretty even standard. And they play each
Okay.
other a lot in kind of UK based bonspiel. So I could see any of those 3 kind of sneaking in. Estonia is, if I'm picking like a team that to do like sneaky good, the 2 sneaky good teams would be Estonia, I think, who've been touring a lot, getting decent results, and they've brought in Derek Brown, former US. So they got a gold medalist coach there, former US national high performance coach, is working with them. That's got a top level coach like that and take it seriously. You'll make some progress. So they could kind of have a good week. And I think Belgium in the B pool is probably a team that other people who aren't kind of following European B group curling as closely as me might not think of. But I think they're kind of building towards something, definitely.
All right. Well, you've spoiled one of your picks with the Netherlands. I also will have the Netherlands going ahead. I'm going to pick Hungary as my second team with Kiss, and
Oh.
as you say, had some success at other disciplines. So I'm going to go with them as my second team to get the spot. But who do you have as the final participant in next year's Euros?
I'm going to go Estonia. I'll pick Estonia. And I think it's mostly because of the pool group, because I can see them making playoffs, and I think they're good enough to pull off those 2 wins you need to. So,
Okay. And who goes down from the B?
oh God, that's painful. I I feel okay. I feel really bad saying. Okay, I think if I'm being honest, I might get well. All right, the 2 that if I'm being 100% honest, is probably Ukraine, which is painful because I think they're doing a lot of stuff, and obviously the story is quite sad. But I just don't think they're quite at this level yet. And then actually Stefan Saver, who I like a lot. I think he's actually a good friend of mine. He gives a lot of effort. I think he's just drawn the group of death here, and it's a tough pool he's in.
Okay,
So
so you're
that's
going
my 2 for relegation, unfortunately.
yeah, so Ukraine and Slovenia. I'm going to agree on Ukraine. Yeah, great story. You guys have talked about it on your show before, the situation with Ukrainian curling. Go check out that episode. But yeah, it's going to be tough sledding for them. And I'm going to go with Wales as the other team that gets relegated for really no
Ouch.
other reason other than my friend Emily studied in Wales. And yeah, that's
Didn't
basically
like it?
I don't know.
My
I've heard
question
things.
is, why is it called Wales if there's a dragon on the flag? That's my perpetual question. Should it be called dragons?
It should. Really should.
The question.
Yeah.
I don't get it, right?
So there it is, our picks on the A and B side. These will be combined, of course, with what Scott and Ryan come up with on the women's side for the bad beer bet. Total points. So it's 1 point for each thing you got correct. Bonus point if you got the winner correct, which means we actually have to make our winner picks to get that bonus point. We forgot to do that.
Oh, yeah.
Who wins, Jonathan? Who's your European champion for 2022?
I'm going to go Retornaz.
All right. So you're going with the Italians. I'm going with Sweden. Like, again, Oscar Ericsson's really, really good. So I'll go with them to win. And with those two picks, then I guess congratulations, Yannick Schwaller, on your 2022 European Championship victory.
We have established that there's no beer Ryan won't drink. So do you, like, if we lose this year, I'm kind of feeling like just law of averages means we're going to lose. So what beer are you going to punish Ryan with?
So it's interesting, right? Yeah, it's hard to get something bad for Ryan, but he has talked about how he's not big on the really hoppy stuff. So I think we'll have to go with something that Scott and I probably might like, and do like a triple IPA or something, or even like a quad IPA that will really be hoppy and get him. Plus, as a father of two young children, he probably doesn't get a lot of sleep. So even 2 sips of it might be dangerous. You'd have to have it late at night and just put him right to bed almost.
Yeah. All right. That's good. I think that's the right call. Like a bad hoppy IPA sour or something.
Yeah. And then, I was in England a little bit. I had COVID while I was there. I followed all the public health protocols in the spring, which were no public health protocols, but I did more than that. But because I was basically not able to do anything, I tried some English beers, some of which I did not care for. So I feel like I can actually find a bad English beer based on that experience for you, Jonathan.
What did you try that you didn't like?
Well, I'd have to look it up on Untapped. There's a lot of house brandy stuff. The other thing too that I maybe it's just me. I don't like that so many English beers in English pubs are nitro pours. I just really don't like nitro pours at all.
That's the style here, though.
Yeah. Maybe that's why I didn't like any of the beers I tried, because so many of them were nitro.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. What do you have? Do you have cask ale or not? Are you a cask ale guy or not really?
No, I don't like those. No.
Like the room temperature bitter?
No, can't do it.
No. I mean, I think that actually British American style IPAs are not that good. And it's a weird thing because it's Americans trying to do a British style beer but make it cold and American, and it's being brought back here.
Right.
And it's not that good. And I had a friend who's a brewer explain it to me about water, something about we have very hard water. Apparently that's bad for IPAs, but good for bitters.
Oh, interesting.
So, anyway.
All right.
Yeah. But yeah, so if you're not a bitters guy, yeah, I don't think anything there's a couple of brands that have kind of got it, but that I'll drink, but it's whenever I'm back in North America, I much prefer a hoppy North American IPA for sure.
Yeah, me too. And again, cold is nice. I'm a fan of that. And not a nitro pour. So I've had 33 English beers according to my Untapped here.
Whoa.
So that feels like enough that I could find one that I've had that I did not like. Neck Oil. I didn't care for Neck Oil by Beaverton.
I like that one. Yeah.
Wells IPA. That was another one.
Haven't had that.
Oh, Main Brace.
Never had that.
Is Asda a store, like ASDA? What's Asda?
It's basically our version of Walmart. Yeah.
Okay. So it's their house brand beer.
So the Asda house beer. House beer. All right. Yeah, that would probably not be that good.
So there you go. Yeah. We'll find something. Yeah. Hopefully we win. Because the problem is if we lose again, there's no bad beers in Ottawa that we have accessible to us that we haven't had to drink so far. We're out of bad beers because we've lost so much. Well, we've lost so much.
There's got to be Is Wildcat still in existence or not?
Oh, I have no idea.
Remember this beer?
No.
That was like when I was
Wildcat.
an undergrad, so that's back. Wildcat was the cheapest. I think it was you could only get it in an 18 pack of cans.
Jeez.
And it was the cheapest thing you get to look at that banner. So it was like,
Okay.
you know, when you're 18 and poor,
Right.
that's what you drink.
Yeah.
But it's not a good beer.
Right. Well, it's on Untapped here. Wildcat. It's got
Another
2.7.
old timey Canadian classic, Lucky Lager. Is that still going?
I've
Lager,
heard of
is that
Lucky
still
Lager. Yeah. Yeah. I would assume that you could find that. Yeah.
They had that at my curling club. It was the worst beer at my curling club.
Yikes. Well, Jonathan, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have not yet, do subscribe to Rocks Across the Pond, wherever it is you get your podcasts. Give them all the likes, the ratings, the comments. We ask you to do the same for us as well. You can visit us at gameofstonespod.com, all of our past episodes, plus link to the merch, proceeds to the Sandra Schmirler Foundation and Food Banks Canada. We, of course, match all those. You can follow along everything we got going on at Game of Stones Pod on Twitter, assuming Twitter still exists by the time you listen to this, and Instagram. Game of Stones Podcast on Facebook. You can reach out, Game of Stones Podcast at gmail.com. Jonathan, for you guys, anything else you guys want to promo, direct people over to Rocks Across the Pond? Anything else you got going on?
At Curling Podcast on Twitter. Very exciting.
Yeah, you got the best handle of all the shows.
No one thought to take Curling Podcast except for Ryan, who's way too on Twitter. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's smart. And I should say, too, you had a book come out recently, and now you slagged it off on your show as like no one's ever going to read it. But someone's going to read it, and that's fun. A book. Congratulations. Have you gotten any royalty checks so far?
I got my last... Okay. All right. I got my latest royalty statement for the last quarter for my book from 10 years ago. 53 cents is my royalties.
Nice.
For the last quarter. So it's like one person somewhere in the world bought my book, 11-year-old book, and I'm thankful to whoever that person is. So thank you. The new book's not out yet. I just got an email today that it's in production. So hopefully it won't be ready for Christmas 2022. I know everyone's disappointed, but hopefully early 2023. Yeah.
Very nice. Very exciting. And I mean, a book, it's still a big deal. I mean, it's a lot of work and you put it all in. Like that's a lot of work. So congratulations.
Thanks. It is a lot of work. And by the end of writing a book, you hate the book. I don't know if you've published a couple of books, right? Do you feel that way too at the end of the process or no?
It sort of varies. Like for me, there were parts of the process that I hated. So by the time the book came out and it was just, all right, we're doing a launch and like you're sort of celebrating that, I don't hate the book or the content. I did hate like maybe not the people, but maybe like some of the way the people acted at times, and not the people who I was co-authors with, but like on the back end of it. But yeah, I can see what you're saying. It's more fun to have had written than it is to write, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think when it comes out, I think I'm in like the worst part, which is like I
page
just keep
proofs.
getting sent these like I haven't got the page proofs yet. It's like this is basically everything in 2022 is online, so it's all metadata. So I had to basically create this giant spreadsheet for each chapter of keywords and like chapter summaries. And it's like you get to a point with a book and you just don't want to look at it anymore. And then you've got to look at it for something that's not even interesting. And it's actually takes a lot of thought to do that, which, anyway. So I'm kind of in the grumpy stage. Once it's actually a physical object, I think I'll be like happy, and then there'll be a chance to promote it, and I'll probably then read it again and be like, it's not as bad as I feared or whatever. And you know how it goes with these things.
There you go. A little book talk at the end of the show. So enjoy the curling, everybody. We'll be back with you again next week. Be sure to check out Rocks Across the Pond. Ryan and Scott will be going through the women's fields, and we'll be alongside to follow everything as we go through the week and the follow-up to see who wins the bad beer bet. But until then, keep those brooms on the ice and don't dump that insert.
Make the final.